the difference between Australian teacher and Taiwanese teacher. Australia. Okay, so here, the primary basis where they use the textbook as the main resources for their lesson plan. Australia is 27.9%. However, Taiwan, Chinese Taipei is 74, almost 75%. And for those adopt textbook as a supplementary resource, Australia is more than 50. It's 56.2%. However, only 19% in Taiwan. So it's very different. Most of the Taiwanese teachers adopt textbook as the main resources for the lesson. However, Australian teacher take it as a supplementary resource instead of the primary basis.
Is this for high school level or?
Teacher question. Okay, you can check it here. The question: how do you use the textbook in teaching science to the class? Because it's referring to the year when they are investigated. It's 2007, I believe. I remember it. Maybe either year 4 or year 7. Yeah. And
there is one higher than one.
yeah.
Yeah, so it could be worse, could be in Bulgaria.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I feel like French, the French education system is textbook. It's just the textbook. Everyone has the same textbook all over the world. Well, yeah.
When I was
well, and also the sample size very broad.
yeah. Do you know TEAMS? It's a very big scale international assessment. And for the recent test, it's being held in 2019, so it's almost 4 years ago. And I was the member in Taiwan to represent my nation to be a member in that organization. So this year that we will have the meeting online. And the next year, 2023, it will be another assessment internationally tested for each country. And it depends on the equipment. In Taiwan, we will use computer, but for those developing countries, if their equipment facility is not enough, they might still use the traditional paper and pencil assessment. And for the past 2 years, we have tried to modify and provide some new test items into the data bank. So for year 4 and year 7, we added some new information, for example, virus, related to pandemic situation for the past 2 years. So that is a kind of a new items in the coming test. And I'm not proud, but I would like to provide the fact that Taiwan, not only Taiwan, but also Japan, North Korea, and Singapore. Yeah, usually some Asian countries, they will be the top 5 countries. And so the last one is 2019. For the 4th grader, the math was the fourth in the world. And for the 8th grader, math and science will be the second. But in the past, the best one is 2007. There has been ones that the 8th grader, their math result is the top one in the world. But we're not proud of it because that is only for the young students. How about tertiary education? I think it's not good. So we have lots of young men, they went abroad and study in the United States, in Europe, or in Australia. Yeah. Okay, I think that is the information from our textbook. The role of textbook in the classroom, there are some three assumptions, okay? Some teachers, they think textbook will help students to structure those goals and objectives. And students will use their textbook to learn course content, and textbook will present the content in a coherent, unbiased fashion. Coherent. That, I think I agree with Dina and Sean. They mentioned that some problems existed in the editing or edition of textbook. So here I want to provide an example about pyramid. That is one of the topics that I have studied in the past. So let's look at what pyramid is. The article is published in 2018. So let's look at pyramid. What is energy pyramid? There's also food pyramid. But the pyramid, what is pyramid? Pyramid means on the base, the energy is full. It's a kind of a percentage relevance to compare how energy goes through in the ecosystem. So on the basis, the plant, they provide us the primary sources of food for secondary, not for secondary, for animals. For example, mouse. Okay, if they eat the plant, the crop, and then only 10% of the energy will go into the primary consumer. That is the mouse. They eat the plant directly, and so their 90% of energy will lost as a kind of heat when they breathe or when they exercise, they move. Okay, so only 10% of energy will remain in their body, and so there is another level of animal. They will eat mouse, so that is secondary consumer, and still only 10% of the energy will remain in the body of the secondary consumer. And there are tertiary, higher level consumer. So depends on the pyramid. It's a kind of a symbol or a metaphor. Yeah, it's kind of metaphor. Trying to make the figure, the number, to be very explicit, but it's only roughly like 1/10. Not very strictly, exactly that kind of a percentage. So depends on the diagram, the higher level of consumer, they have very few or very limited resources of their food. So once the basis of their food resources was not enough, then the higher level of the animal, they will die because they're starved and they don't have enough resource food to eat. And okay, so that is the basic idea about the food energy. And this is a diagram that I modified from our textbook, Taiwanese textbook. And that is the reading article provided for students, year 7 students. Do you remember last week that the reading comprehension I conducted is quantitative online study? So it's multiple choice and students need only to click on the correct item and that's it. However, this is a qualitative study. So I invited students to sit in front of me and they read the article and tell me, thinking aloud, tell me what the verbal and text me. Yeah. And the other, controlled version of the reading article is that, the same verbal word, but the diagram is different. Okay, try to print it.
How to print it or how to what?
Criticize.
It's not nearly as clear as your version because although all the numbers are there, the flow of how energy goes is not the same. Also, I like that on top you had the eagle eating the snake, whereas this one is just kind of flying away. So it's less explicit. Also, I like that in yours you had the sun involved because it shows where this energy comes from in the first place.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just 100% of one.
Okay.
Arrows.
Hours. Yeah. So that is the assumption that why I use that as an experimental material for a group of students. The assumption that the hypothesis that make me assume that this one will be better. The student will understand the idea, energy flow in an ecosystem much better than the control group. Any criticize about the diagram? So ugly, right? How can you adopt such an ugly diagram for the student to read? It's unfair.
Well, I mean, the red
Well,
is
you know,
realistic.
it's not mustard.
The fact that they're realistic and now pointing to different directions
Yeah.
is very distracting.
But it's not even fully realistic, because you have realistic, and then afterwards you have like they could have just made the whole thing realistic instead of using kind of like that's not a real sky or whatever, that's not like a real situation. Put them on like a white background, that would work, but they're mixing two different artistic styles. I mean, it's not even in the line, like the grass is bothering me.
And the snake too is going to It's very
It
probable.
just looks like someone used Photoshop.
That's the part. That's the part in like
Yeah, is the snake on a tree branch or something?
Yeah.
The one snake is on another snake.
Odd,
There's a
right?
small snake coming out of the big snake's mouth, like in an
Yeah, it's
alien.
hard to tell, like,
Yeah.
okay, so the first one, yeah, it's the snake, what's the other one?
So ugly.
One looks like a snake, the other looks like a tame world.
Oh,
It does.
Sorry for going there.
And the eagle should be so much bigger.
the grass.
The text remains the same. And I thought that the mouse stays frozen somewhere. Not very vivid. Actively, they can move.
They're floating, like suspended.
Yeah.
Also, when you read the text and you have only this picture, you don't know where the energy comes from, right? They don't mention.
Yeah.
There's no legend where it tells us what the
So it's
percentage is
incomplete
on.
diagram.
So it's just like 100% what we need.
Okay. So how can I deprive revoke the right of learner? Yeah, like use that kind of ugly or bad worse design diagram. How can I treat them like that?
I had a question. Is the public shelf of this book the same public shelf with the one that you can use here?
Great. Actually, for the reader, I didn't use the real version, sorry. Actually, for the students, when they read the text, it is much beautiful than that. It's only for publication because the copyright. So I don't pay enough money to purchase the original version because for the mouse I have to pay some money, for the snake another money, and so it costs a lot. So the image editor, the company, tried to suggest me use some free copyright. So it's ugly.
Have you ever been to a cheap KTV place where they have the music, the real music with the music videos, just like random images of like white people like walking through a forest?
And the songs, it's not the real singer.
It's not the real singer and like it's
West Side.
yeah. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And that, no, because like when I look at it, like when I look from far, my poor eyesight, I would just think like maybe are they doing like that one on the far tiny bear?
Yeah, I was
And
thinking that.
awesome.
It's like a bear.
I'm used to a white mouse.
Yeah, so I think that's the reason why it looks so ugly.
Basically,
Or,
diagrams never use real pictures, right? I cannot think of
No,
any
some
diagrams that use real pictures.
Some do, but it's a little distracting.
Yeah, it's
No,
distracting.
the spacing is not, at least some really do.
And yeah, I'm just wondering because if this book and the book that you consider as a good one, the same publisher, so they should have the same source of images that they purchase from for evidence or, because it's like.
from the original author.
Yeah, so I don't know, I mean, if they are different publisher, maybe it's blend a little bit because the rich publishers might have a better image,
Yeah.
the better one have.
Because I'm the author to publish that article,
Yeah.
so I didn't have enough money to
Yeah.
pay the original authors, so I changed the image.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use the free copyright. Yeah, that's ugly.
But the textbook layout is very cultural. Like whether they put a lot more text or numbers, it's very much based on the culture. It's not,
Yeah.
like Taiwan, I think they're much more like, I think much more scientific or whatever, so we don't use as much text here, versus like in the US, it's much more, I guess, linguistics or something, so when you have a diagram, you need to have a lot of text and you need to have like nice clear colors, because students, in my opinion, tend to focus more on the diagram than the text, and in Taiwan, they focus more on the text, like you were saying, than the pictures. So this is not as important as the content of how to find information in the text.
Okay, so let's look at the original copies. Okay, this is the original copy from textbook. Yeah, but I don't have their permission, so I didn't use the original copy.
Oh, so they have the arrow on the original.
Yeah, they use the R, but I try to. Do you remember?
I still like yours more because it stays inside the
Yeah.
line.
He's lost. Yeah, and I try to make the different ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Different ones of the energy are transferred to the next level.
And then like the hue of the color, like the different types of color, yellow, orange, and red.
Okay, so according to the hypothesis, the reader read this diagram should have better comprehension.
Should.
Yeah.
And, okay, so look at the research design. Maybe I can introduce the original textbook version. That is, the image appeared in Taiwanese textbook. Okay, no errors. But with percentage number on the right-hand side.
So it says, just so everyone knows, rice is on the bottom, and the middle one is a kind of insect that eats the rice.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
third one is a lizard that eats the insect, and the top one is an eagle.
Yep.
So, it is kind of, it stands out more because it's more 3D looking.
Yeah, yeah, cubic.
That kind of catches your eye a bit more.
Yeah.
If they had worked on the images a lot more, they wouldn't have to have so much text, and then they can have something else. For example, I think with Dylan, you translated that as like what the
It's very simple, yeah.
yeah. So like as the whatever eating whatever.
Yeah.
They didn't. It was very clear, like, without all that grass, and like this, the mice were standing out, and like it was clear that it was like rice patties or whatever they were trying to do. They wouldn't need to write all that. They could use the little text to do something else.
If I can just interject though, I think from the names they're trying to do like a cross-disciplinary thing. Because that second one, it's 吃完好吃
Yeah.
爬西. So like that's not the word for lizard, that's like a specific kind of lizard.
Yeah.
I think they're
Yeah.
also trying to teach the students what this lizard is.
Yeah, yeah.
But then is that the point? Like the thing is when you want to focus on them understanding, you want to focus on them understanding a concept, you have to introduce new information that is useless for this particular context.
Fair point.
Problem is the second floor.
Yeah,
They have to be white.
Is there a mouse somewhere? Is there a mouse?
yeah.
It's a lizard, no, it's an insect, it's a bug.
Insect.
That's an insect.
Kind of cricket, right?
I really don't see.
I don't see it either, but it's
could put a
Yeah.
little.
I just, yeah, it sounds like it's dark.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh, no wonder the lizard now, that makes sense, okay.
All right. So I didn't know anyway.
I was very confused.
Enough?
Yes.
So let's look at Australia. No. Australia. Yeah.
The rabbit one is much.
Octopus.
So this one is okay.
But this is, they use food trend. Food trend is based on energy pyramid. So the basis, okay, this is represent the full energy flow in ocean. So that is the tiny planes and small fish, bigger fish, larger fish, and octopus.
I have a question, why we need to include like numbers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Distracting too.
So different design.
So it's like if two larger fish,
That's
they
gonna
use
be
6
math.
small fish to feed it. Then why you just put what in these three?
But
Maybe because they wanted 500 plants. They can't just, yeah.
Half an hour.
then on your graph, you said 90% lost. Is it just a random number or is it scientifically proven?
Scientific.
So this one is just a random number, right?
Ah, so this one's incorrect.
Since it's not 90% of 500,
Maybe
right?
it's a unit of energy or something.
You have 500 plants, how much?
Yeah, 500 times energy is the equivalent of, you know, then the loss of 6 small fish, and then the loss of energy equals like 2 larger fish, I don't know.
Give us a percentage of
And
Yes.
this is 2005. Isn't the Taiwanese one the same thing?
This is from Australia,
2005. Is the
2005.
Taiwanese also 2005?
Taiwan is 2010.
Oh.
Okay.
This needs to be updated, there needs to be plastic everywhere.
So here, this is the one, 2005, Wiley from, not Wiley, but later I will make sure which publisher is. So each one will have a piece and try to look at the verbal text and the image mode. Okay. So you can have a break or keep trying to read the page.
So here it does something similar to the Taiwanese one because it has a picture of a springtail, but all I see is dirt. And then a currawong, which I'm guessing is a kind of bird.
The description on the slide is getting bigger. What is getting bigger? Or less and more? I mean, you can kind of can guess what it means, but this is really maybe not so sure.
So I think we will back to the big class to discuss about this page 141 around 10 after 11. So you have a break.
like the scribbles and everything that's nice.
Ooh, I love that.
Visual mode.
So,
Oh, yeah.
like they say, as you can see in figure 5.12, and then they bring up numbers, but you can't see
They don't actually introduce the difference between the food chain and the food pyramid. They don't make reference to figure 5.11. Also, Phil was the first to notice about the food
I
chain.
was wondering about the wolf spider and the centipede. I'm not so sure if the centipede can eat a wolf spider.
Yeah, that's what I was
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think there's.
I mean, maybe he can, but it's like hard for students to reference that.
Yeah, the centipede is small.
There's those bugs, sometimes even if they're small, they can
They're like
eat
this,
very
right?
big stuff. Like they can put them apart and then eat it small.
Maybe, yeah, maybe Australian spiders are centipedes are big.
There's like some comments on the language, like there's less and less energy and using a contraction, which I'm like, what the hell? But what was I gonna say? I feel like they should have just taken the first sentence, deleted everything else in that paragraph, and then continued. Because if you're giving me a definition, a food pyramid is a way of showing the numbers of all organisms at each level of the food chain. And it also shows how there is less and less energy available. I want all the information together. I don't want useless numbers or words such as numbers. And then, like Phil was saying, there are no numbers in the visual representation, which makes no sense. And then they mention lions, and there are no lions here. So if I'm an EL learner, if I'm an EL student, I'm just looking at this and I'm like, okay, numbers, 1,000. Lion, zebra, and I look and I'm like, shark? Hold on, and I'm just gonna be stuck there. Yeah.
It's minor in the sea. It makes
Does
it
it less energy, more energy? I kind of don't get how they like seems like they put like farmers like concept, if two like bigger fish eat all of those medium fish, that means the energy needed by the shark is more, right?
I see.
It doesn't make any sense.
I agree with you.
No, less energy is less for the shark. The shark is the least point, and then there's
Yeah, but after all this fish eat of this energy, if I were kids, I would just empty it out. I will assume the shark need more energy, so you get too big for fish.
And why do I feel like the one who wrote this is a vegan? Because there's really discriminate between carnivore and herbivores.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
yeah.
you mean, what do you want to say?
As soon as I see there are far less predators than prey, I'm like, get them.
But I think
Far fewer predators.
right. The problem is that the text is usually first, right? And then some designer will make the cut.
Probably,
So maybe the designer will just not read the text or not understand. Because they also say the numbers of consumers getting smaller, but then here it's the opposite, getting bigger, getting smaller. Of course they mean
Fewer.
the size of the animals, but they don't talk about the size of any predator view.
And even like, I'm used to, when I have science textbooks, being able to understand the information from the visual text alone. This assumes you have to read the text before you look at the diagram. You should be able to do one or the other.
But does it remind you when you have a novel and you read the text and then you look at the cover, but actually the cover doesn't fit it to the text at all?
Yeah, sometimes it happens.
Because the designer doesn't read the text on the book.
And why do we have that shark there, the real shark? Like, it's just,
Because sharks are cool.
but it's, the placement is off. We can use more white space. Get rid of that shark.
So I understand that maybe the idea behind, mentioning Africa and lions and stuff is linking foreknowledge. It's linking the student's previous knowledge to, the current diagram. I'm not sure if it's necessary.
They could have used the lions because before the lesson before you have carnivores, which I guess why they're mentioning carnivores and herbivores, but again, focus on what you're trying to teach. You don't always need to reference old material because they don't need to know that they're carnivores and herbivores in order to activate schema or schema or whatever. they are just trying to understand what a food pyramid is.
I think they're trying to, by using Africa and like Serengeti or whatever, it's like saying, imagine visiting the plains of Africa. So it's like trying to allow students to imagine that they're there. You can't do that with the ocean. You can't say, imagine you're at like 1,000 meters down in the ocean and sharks. I'm not saying it's good, I'm just saying this is probably why. Like,
At the very end though, it's kind of making you visualize getting attacked by a shark.
yeah, well, it doesn't say imagine you're being attacked by a shark. Like it's saying imagine visiting the plains of Africa. I think that's why they're
Say
doing.
you're being attacked by a shark.
It's kind of a happenstance, kind of a imagine you're.
It's a little bit everywhere, isn't it? Yeah. If I can ask, Professor, because we're kind of tearing into this chart with good reason, I think. But you mentioned a couple times that since we're discussing all the problems with this illustration and the textbook, so experiments should show that students understand text better when it's set out in a more logical way. Do they actually show that?
I will show you according to my study.
Okay.
Later.
Later, okay.
I have that kind of design to meet your need. And I think it seems that you usually echo to my heart. Another page from the other publisher, Australian publisher.
Also, with
I like it already.
this text,
It's like all textbooks.
why not use bullet points? Surely bullet points would be a lot more, because it's like pieces of information. I don't really, the layout even of this, I'm not really sure.
But kids have to learn to read a book.
Yeah.
It's like having
That's
this
the
class.
point. If you can go bullet points, people say, oh, I want to put in my homework with bullet points.
So I would expect more, like, bold words, like kind of target, vocabulary. I would expect more to be in bold,
And we have those small boxes for vocabulary and recite.
Yeah, like keywords in a box or highlighted.
So for the energy pyramid, the same concept only appear on the right-hand column. There's nothing, we don't need to read or criticize on the left column about biodiversity.
For me, it is hard work.
Yeah, they don't use pyramids.
This is
The
really
term
written to a
here.
higher grade level.
They only use food chain.
Well, it's a lot better job of explaining what's actually going on.
Yeah.
The text is well written.
If they're, are we starting?
Wait.
Something the top is going to die, decay, and everything against the bottom.
Well, that's part of the ecosystem. Like it's a cycle.
So I mean, it's,
That's why biologists typically refer to food web.
that would be so that's not one direction, that's it.
But that's
Yeah,
not
it's not
flow of
really
energy.
Huh?
It's not energy flow. Because by then the thing dies, there's no energy from that.
Of course,
thing.
there is potential energy, chemical
Yeah,
energy.
but then that will go into the cycle. The
But
life.
it's not one direction, it's not right. It's one direction will tell you. Like a circle isn't one direction, it's all directions.
No, but the flow of
That's
energy.
one direction, that's one direction. This is every single direction. By
Yeah.
virtue of being a
So the
circle,
flow
it's
of
I'm
energy-
gonna disagree with you actually.
Yeah.
Think about this.
360 degrees, it's all directions.
But the flow of energy.
But the flow of energy is one direction.
Yeah, and then there's the
It's-
cycle.
it's-
There's
it's
different.
all
It
directions.
might
And it's a circle, it's all directions. By virtue of being a circle.
Clockwise or counterclockwise?
Yeah.
Only
counterclockwise
one.
and counterclockwise.
Only one.
It's 360 degrees. It's like,
Energy.
Yeah.
And then there's the other.
technically, energy can either be created or destroyed. So it's not even moving in one direction, it's everywhere all the time.
Well, it is.
It just changes
it comes
from one
from the
form
sun.
to another.
Two different.
It's
But this flowing in one direction from the sun to the earth.
It's everywhere. Yeah, you can translate the changes in energy, but it's everywhere all the time in different forms. So technically, like energy.
Fifth graders aren't going to
No, but like it's the wording of it.
discussing energy just the one way.
It's, I don't think it's correct. Energy means.
I think they're just focusing on the energy loss.
It's the wording.
It's a the flow of energy through the ecosystem is one direction only and it's defined as the energy loss. So when energy is created, that's another concept.
But that sentence, energy in an ecosystem moves in one direction only.
Yeah,
I don't think.
and then in the bottom,
But it's not in reference to anything else. That's the statement. Energy in an ecosystem moves in one direction only. I don't agree.
I think they're saying, for example, that a cricket can eat corn, but corn never eats crickets.
Well, say that. Like that's. That's a
Maybe
statement.
one day someone will
Okay.
be
That's a statement that is correct, but this statement, I would not agree that it's correct.
Okay.
So, that's just, I don't know, it's like accuracy. Words have meaning. Be accurate, don't be inaccurate. Don't
this is what.
say something and not consider it.
Okay, in addition to those verbal problem or verbal description, any other problem or any other question related to the text and the image?
Yes, when
Yeah.
they talk about plants, why do I have a seal,
Yeah.
some fish,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm upset.
Yeah.
And then what Susie was talking about before, this one has no mold, and that usually is what gets me excited. So like I'm thinking, I circled energy, ecosystem, photosynthesis, and maybe plant, they should be molded.
Yeah, or
Biodiversity.
Yeah.
the key ideas, key
Yeah.
words.
But now, help me skim.
It also seems like they kind of introduced a little societal problem as well. Like they go off a little bit of a tangent saying that humans, have reduced the biodiversity of many regions, which is true, but it's also like, huh?
Unrelated sentence.
Unrelated sentence.
Yeah.
It's got an agenda.
Yeah.
I think the explanation is actually not that bad. Only that they don't mention the term food pyramid, and that's hardly there's a question
No
about food
pyramid.
pyramid without a pyramid.
It's a food box.
But I do like the example of the spider eating the cricket.
Oh.
Or the mantis, or whatever that is.
Where they say the levels, like the leaves of plants in water, and then I thought, wait, is it ocean water or is it? I think it can be a little bit.
Because we're looking at pictures of animals in the ocean. Plankton, people don't really think of plankton as a plant. So why are they mentioning plants?
Yeah.
Photosynthesis
It
is
is
not.
70% of the world's oxygen comes from plankton, no?
But they're animals, right?
The plants animals.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
SpongeBob messed me up, because I kept thinking it was an animal.
Ah.
He's a character.
That's true, he is a
So you don't automatically think of plankton as a plant. So why are they mentioning photosynthesis? Is that relevant?
And there's not enough herbivores here, I guess that's their point. I guess if the plankton is a herbivore now, then we know it. And so,
I think photosynthesis is just that topic coming from biodiversity. So they shouldn't necessarily have.
but they're using it to talk about flow of energy. They're using it to kind of like scaffold. Like, you know what photosynthesis is, and now here is how you would know flow of energy. But there's a huge gap right about in this area. We can say, first of all, that this from there on, they just lost everybody. The only good sentence is the energy for this reaction is provided by the sun's light. And so that's where it starts. But we don't even see that in this, where the sun is doing anything.
So there is no sense or no feeling about energy flow based on your comprehension about this diagram, right? I think that's a huge problem.
It depends if they learn about photosynthesis before, that they don't need to see it again.
Yeah, this is also unit 6.3. So is there anything that mentioned beforehand?
But just there's no.
We don't know.
Then the examples, that instead of mentioning photosynthesis, I would like to know more about the seal. Because I really don't understand much. Like, I don't understand the basic part of it, but I don't really understand like the detail. Just like, here they were a bit more detailed, granted they went off topic, but I have an understanding of
I like that diagram because it relates to the final sentence in this article, which I think is quite well written. For this reason, the number of plants in any ecosystem is greater than the number of herbivores and carnivores that eat them. I think it's much better presented
Yeah.
than anything in the previous previous article we read.
Unfortunately, that's the only sentence that connects the text to the picture.
True. And it's possible that the picture was designed with that sentence in mind.
So there is a book. The title is The Relationship Between Image and Text. So that is a book I bought from Australia. So that could be a title of study. If you are interested in those kind of relationship between verbal mode and visual mode. Okay, so let's shift to my study. How did I know the comprehension of from image, or are their understanding only from their verbal reading or verbal comprehension? How can I tell each type of comprehension from different modes? So it's based on I have to have very careful or skillful design in order to differentiate the comprehension at different stage or different phase. Okay, so here are my research questions. The first one: how does the existence? Do you remember the arrows? Okay, arrows. Okay, different color represent the different energy loss or transferred or from the source of sun. Okay, so the research question: how does the existence of arrows influence grade 7 learners' meaning making in reading an energy pyramid diagram? And the second, what do grade 7 learners think about the use of arrows when you said energy pyramid diagram? Do you think if there is no verbal text, will students understand the meaning of those diagrams
Without arrows?
without verbal text, without any illustration?
With arrows in the picture or no arrows? With arrows, they can
Either with arrow or without arrow.
I think when you have arrows, it's much easier.
So in order for them to understand the meaning, I think it's also a kind of variable I have to control. Yeah. If I try to interpret by the researcher, that means that the control condition is not so good as if I put the verbal text just beside the diagram. So okay, here is my research design. So in the first stage, I provide students only image, only the diagram, without caption, without any words, only diagram, visual mode only. So I asked them, can you try to tell me what the meaning of this diagram